Imagine you're walking across your college campus. It's dark. The air has that sharp, crisp bite of a Pacific Northwest spring. You're alone, but you feel completely safe. This is your home. Suddenly, a man steps out from the shadows of a nearby parking lot, but you don't feel afraid. In fact, your instinct isn't to run, it's to help. Because this man is young, handsome, well-dressed, and he's struggling. His arm is heavily wrapped in a white medical sling. He's fumbling with a stack of heavy library books and a set of car keys, looking incredibly frustrated. He flashes a charming, embarrassed smile and says, "Excuse me, miss. I'm having a really hard time. Could you possibly help me carry these to my car?" What do? Human nature, basic human decency, tells you to take the books, to walk with him to his car, to do a good deed. On the night of April 17th, 1974, two young women on the campus of Central Washington State College encountered this exact man. They listened to his plea, but for different reasons. Both of them said no and walked away. They lived. But later that same night, a third young woman crossed paths with the handsome stranger with the broken arm. She had a kind heart. She took the books. She followed him to his brown Volkswagen Beetle in the dark, and she was never seen alive again. Behind every infamous monster are the innocent lives they stole and the chilling methods they used to operate in plain sight. Welcome to episode 3 of The Bundy Files. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we cover the darkest true crime stories, breaking them down detail by detail. Today, we are looking at the third confirmed murder in Ted Bundy's horrific reign of terror. This is the case where the killer perfected his most terrifying weapon. It wasn't a knife. It wasn't a gun. It was a false sense of security. This is the tragic, heartbreaking story of Susan Rancourt. To understand the sheer panic that eventually gripped the state of Washington, we have to look at the spring of 1974. At this point in our timeline, two young women had already vanished into thin air from the Seattle area. Linda Ann Healy in January and Donna Manson in March. Police were entirely baffled. But Ellensburg, Washington, home to Central Washington State College, was over 100 miles away from Seattle. It was a quiet, rural college town surrounded by sweeping plains and mountains. It was the kind of place where students left their dorm room doors unlocked. It was the perfect hunting ground. Enter Susan Elaine Rancourt. Susan was 18 years old, a freshman with a bright future. She was strikingly beautiful, with long blonde hair parted right down the middle, a style very popular in the 70s. But more than her looks, Susan was known for her brain and her incredibly disciplined personality. She was a biology major who dreamed of working in the medical field. She was a creature of intense, predictable habit. Her friends and family knew exactly where she was going to be at almost any hour of the day. She was highly organized, incredibly responsible, and uniquely cautious. In fact, Susan was terrified of walking in the dark. She had recently watched a scary movie that left her feeling uneasy about the shadows on campus. Because of this, she made it a strict personal rule. She never walked alone at night if she could help it. If she absolutely had to go somewhere after dark, she stuck to the brightest, most well-lit paths, practically sprinting from building to building. She was the last person on Earth who would willingly get into a car with a strange man in the middle of the night, which makes what happened to her all the more chilling. Let's walk through the timeline of April 17, 1974. It was a Wednesday. The campus was busy with midweek activities. Susan spent her afternoon like any other typical freshman. She attended classes, studied, and around 8 p.m., she decided to do some laundry. She gathered her clothes and walked down to the basement laundry room of her dormitory, Bardo Hall. She loaded her clothes into a washing machine, poured in the detergent, and started the cycle. But Susan had a meeting to attend. There was a mandatory gathering for students interested in studying abroad, featuring a German film presentation in another building on campus, Bouillon Hall. She looked at her watch. She figured she had just enough time to walk over, attend the meeting, and get back before her clothes needed to be switched to the dryer. She left the laundry room, stepped out of her dorm, and walked into the cool night air. She made it to Bouillon Hall without an issue. Witnesses confirmed she was at the meeting. She sat through the film, listened to the advisors, and at roughly 10 p.m., the meeting wrapped up. Susan gathered her belongings, put on her yellow coat, and stepped out of the building to make the short walk back to Bardo Hall to finish her laundry. It was a walk that should have taken less than 5 minutes. She never made it. To understand what happened in those 5 minutes, we have to look at the predator lurking in the shadows. Ted Bundy was evolving. In his earlier attacks, he had relied on stealth, sneaking into homes while his victims slept. But that was risky. He realized that the easiest way to abduct a woman wasn't to overpower her in the dark. It was to convince her to walk to her own demise. He used his natural good looks, his articulate speech, and a twisted understanding of female empathy. He knew that women are socially conditioned to be polite, to be helpful, and to not cause a scene. He weaponized their kindness. On this particular night in Ellensburg, Bundy arrived with a prop, a medical sling strapped over his arm. He parked his brown Volkswagen Beetle in a poorly lit parking lot near the campus library, intentionally keeping it in the shadows. Then, he gathered a stack of heavy books and began to wander the campus pathways, pretending to struggle. We know exactly how his ruse worked that night, because Susan Rancourt was not the first girl he approached. Earlier that evening, another female student was walking to the library. A handsome man with his arm in a sling approached her. He dropped his keys, fumbled with his books, and asked for help carrying them to his car. She agreed. She took the books and walked with him. But as they approached his car, she noticed something that sent a massive red flag shooting up her spine. The man was leading her away from the well-lit areas, toward a dark, isolated alleyway where a brown VW Bug was parked. Even stranger, the passenger seat of the car had been completely removed. Her intuition screamed at her. She dropped the books on the hood of the car, turned around, and walked away as fast as she could. The man didn't follow her. A little while later, he tried again. He approached a second young woman. He used the exact same script: the broken arm, the dropped keys, the heavy books. But this girl was in a rush. She simply said, "I'm sorry, I'm late," and kept walking. 2 near misses. 2 girls who narrowly avoided becoming the third victim of America's most notorious serial killer. But Bundy was patient. He just reset the trap. And he waited. And then, along came Susan. We will never know the exact words spoken between Ted Bundy and Susan Rancourt, but based on her psychological profile, experts know exactly why the trap worked on her. Susan was terrified of the dark, yes. She was cautious, yes. But she was also a deeply compassionate biology major who wanted to be a medical professional. When she saw a man with a medical injury, struggling and in pain, her caution was overridden by her empathy. She didn't see a threat. She saw a patient. She saw someone who genuinely needed her help. She took the books. She walked with him into the dark. And the moment she got close to the passenger side of that brown VW Bug, the helpless, injured stranger vanished. The predator took over. In a flash of terrifying violence, Bundy would strike his victims over the head with a hidden crowbar, shove their unconscious bodies into the space where the passenger seat used to be, and drive away into the night. By 10:05 p.m., Susan Rancourt was gone. Back at Bardo Hall, the washing machine stopped spinning. The damp clothes sat inside. An hour passed, then 2. The next morning, Susan's roommate woke up and saw that Susan's bed hadn't been slept in. Her toothbrush was still there. Her makeup, her clothes, everything was untouched. Knowing how strictly disciplined Susan was, her roommate immediately knew something was horribly wrong. Susan didn't do impromptu sleepovers. She didn't skip classes, and she never left her laundry sitting in a public machine overnight. By Thursday afternoon, the campus police were notified. At first, they gave the standard response. She's a college student. She probably just went off with a boyfriend. Give it 48 hours. But Susan's parents drove straight to Ellensburg. They told police, "You don't understand our daughter. If she is not in her room, and she is not at class, someone has taken her." When police searched Susan's dorm room, the gravity of the situation finally set in. They found the damp, soured clothes still sitting in the washing machine downstairs. They found her meticulously maintained calendar. They found zero evidence that she had packed a bag or planned to leave. It was as if she had stepped off the face of the earth. When the local news broadcasted the story of the missing Ellensburg co-ed, the 2 young women who had encountered the man with the sling felt the blood drain from their faces. They immediately contacted the police. They reported the handsome man, the fake broken arm, the missing passenger seat, and the brown Volkswagen Bug. Detectives took the reports, but incredibly, the massive significance of these clues didn't fully register at a state level right away. You have to remember, this was 1974. There were no computerized databases connecting police departments. The term serial killer wasn't even widely used yet. But a few sharp investigators in Seattle saw the report from Ellensburg and felt a cold chill. Linda Ann Healy, gone. Donna Manson, gone. And now, Susan Rancourt, gone. 3 beautiful, smart, young college women with long hair parted in the middle, all vanished in the span of 3 months within the state of Washington. The police finally realized they weren't looking for runaways. They were hunting a ghost. For nearly a year, Susan's family lived in the agonizing purgatory of the unknown. They prayed she was suffering from amnesia, or that she had somehow wandered off. They just wanted her home. But in March of 1975, almost exactly a year later, the horrifying truth was finally unearthed. Forestry students were hiking on a rugged, heavily wooded slope outside of Seattle called Taylor Mountain. It was a desolate, quiet place. As they walked through the brush, they stumbled upon something white resting in the dirt. It was a human skull. Police descended on Taylor Mountain. What they found there would forever scar the history of the Pacific Northwest. Scattered among the ferns and the towering pine trees were the fragmented remains of multiple victims. Through dental records, the coroner identified the remains. Linda Ann Healy was there. Donna Manson was there. And tragically, Susan Rancourt was there. Bundy had driven her over 100 miles from Ellensburg, deep into the wilderness of Taylor Mountain, to end her life. The murder of Susan Rancourt was a major turning point in the Ted Bundy investigation. It proved to police that the killer was highly mobile, willing to drive hours just to find the right hunting ground. It gave them their first real, tangible suspect description: a handsome man, an arm in a sling, a brown VW Bug. But more tragically, Susan's story forces us to look at the darkest, most unfair reality of true crime. Susan did absolutely nothing wrong. She followed all the rules. She stayed in the light. She managed her schedule. She tried to do the right thing. Ted Bundy didn't look for weakness. He looked for goodness. He knew that a good person wouldn't be able to walk away from a struggling, injured man in the dark. He took the best parts of human nature, our empathy, our kindness, our willingness to help a stranger, and he turned them into a weapon. Susan Rancourt wasn't a victim because she was careless. She was a victim because she was kind. And that is a tragedy that should never be forgotten. As the spring of 1974 turned into summer, the pace of the disappearances would only accelerate. Bundy's confidence was growing, his bloodlust was intensifying, and his ruses were becoming even more bold. In our next episode, episode 4, we will look at how this monster managed to walk into a crowded, bustling area in broad daylight and snatch his next victims from right under the noses of hundreds of witnesses. You won't want to miss it. The monsters of our world rarely look like the ones from our nightmares. Sometimes, they smile, they ask for help, and they drive a car just like yours. If you appreciate how we tell these true crime stories, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and leave a like on the video. It helps the channel grow and allows us to keep shedding light on these important cases. Leave a comment below. What would you have done if a stranger with a broken arm asked for help carrying his books? Let me know your thoughts. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and I'll see you in the next episode.